What is up, y'all? Welcome to another episode. We are going to be talking about, do you really need to count calories to hit your goals and have success? But before we go into that, I just wanted to remind you guys, we have great resources below in the comments and descriptions, depending on where you're watching this. And again, speaking of watching this, if you're listening to this on a podcasting platform, you can also catch the video on YouTube or on our social media. And if you're watching it on social media, we also have our other platforms, YouTube, anywhere you can watch podcasts, anything like that, totally available. And you can get a free PDF resource below detailing a little bit more what we talk about here and kind of debunking this idea that you need to count calories and what just kind of information I'm going to be talking about throughout this podcast. So with that being said, I kind of alluded to this idea that, do you really need to count calories? Now I'm going to preface this by saying, not a doctor, this is not medical advice. Obviously speak to your doctor, work with your medical and health team, or if you're a client of ours, obviously we're digging into that and we're kind of taking care of this. But I'm going to say this first and foremost, again, prefacing it kind of a little bit more. I actually do count calories. Now, this might kind of surprise you since I'm almost kind of debunking this. And we've actually done, years ago, I did a podcast on this, and I think it caused, I don't want to say controversy, but it made people kind of question, hey, wait, why am I counting calories then? Or like, where does this come from? So I'm a fan of counting calories because I love data, truthfully. And I just love being able to have metrics to compare to. And we're going to dig into some of the actual metrics and data and the reliability actually of a lot of the calories that you're seeing on nutrition labels. Interestingly enough, may not be that accurate. And that's okay as well. It doesn't mean completely throw it out the window. There's a time and a place and there's value behind it. But I just kind of wanted to throw that out first. So now let's talk about where does this question even come from? And the key part, I think, raising this question is when you're counting calories, it can be a potential source of stress and create an unhealthy relationship to food and even in your own mind, because you're now judging everything you do. And it can then say, you know what? And it's good to be aware. So there's that caveat of like mindful eating, but then starting to teeter towards potentially unhealthy kind of thought processes and like the thought distortion that can come with that. So that's why I think this is a really important podcast and topic and just episode in general. And even more so to that, with this idea of, we're in summertime right now, everyone's trying to get their beach body on in case they didn't already. And even if you're watching this in the future and it's in the wintertime or it's cold near you and you're not worried about beach body, but you're just trying to change your body composition and you're thinking about, well, obviously I'm going to have to count my calories, figure out what's going in, what's going out. And there's definitely a component of basically to lose body composition and fat and weight, you need to be burning more than your body is consuming. That's a very general statement. There's a lot of other variables at play here, but at the most basic essence, you do want to be burning more calories than your body is burning to leverage fat storages that you have and not be storing additional fat. Now, I say that to say that's where a big part of counting calories comes from, because if we're being aware of how many calories we're burning, as well as what our basal metabolic rate is, which is a fancy way of saying how many calories our body's naturally going to burn just by doing daily functions like breathing, our heart, and just if you were to lay in bed basically and your body just had to survive and just work to keep you alive, it's burning calories. So there's certain functions that are going to consume energy. So knowing that number, which we have formulas for, and that's what we go through with our clients when we are trying to figure out calories, if we're going to be going that route, and there's a time and a place for it, as well as if we can figure out, okay, this is how many calories I'm burning. If I can figure out how many calories I'm consuming, I can then make a pretty good estimate or guesstimate as to, how quickly or slowly I'm going to lose weight or what that could look like. And if I'm even losing weight or why I'm not, and some issues around that. Because in the past episodes, we've talked about plateauing, we've talked about maintenance and travel as well. And now with this kind of summertime and vacationing, we're going to be even talking about vacations in future episodes and how all this comes together. This is a really important piece because from a sustainability standpoint, that's a common word and theme we've used in podcasts in the past. It may not be sustainable for you to always count calories. And that's where the potentially unhealthy kind of relationship can come into play. If you're obsessing about, how many calories are in this? I can't go to a restaurant because I don't know how many calories are in that food. And Chuck and myself, we even talked about this in past episodes. You do want to try and control as much of your food choices as possible by making it yourself, prepping it yourself. But also, you don't want to miss out on life, right? Because why are you doing this? If you even want a six pack, Is it worth it enough to you to sacrifice all these other things? If it is, that's a different conversation. That's totally okay. And even in the PDF below, we have additional resources that not only break down, again, calories, how inaccurate some things can be, anywhere from 10 to 40% inaccuracy when it comes to logging calories, both on the nutrition labels as well as just in databases, and even when it comes to burning calories, how inaccurate some estimates can be, but also just the spectrum of what's healthy and unhealthy, even body composition wise. Obviously, it's unhealthy to be obese. It's unhealthy to be overweight to a certain capacity because the risk that's associated with it from chronic diseases, heart disease, lung disease, or issues related to cardiovascular and lung function, as well as just, cancer and any kind of comorbidities that exist with that. So the risks of you dying early because of having a higher body composition are significantly more. And especially now with, since COVID hit, that's another contributing factor. Even when we talk about diabetes and other choices, like if we're smoking, if there's tobacco use, drinking use, drug use, all these things also come into play as well. So that's one part of it. The other part to that is saying, okay, if we go too lean, believe it or not, there's an unhealthy component. Now, I'll be honest with you. I do not think most of us out here are too lean, right? We're not so lean that it's unhealthy, but there is that possibility for men. If we're getting below 4% body fat, like 2 to 4% is kind of the maximal threshold. You want to have a certain amount of body fat to protect your organs, to insulate, to cushion. They have a role and a function. And for women, it's probably going to be about 6 to 8%, maybe 10% is that maximal threshold you don't want to drop below. And again, this relates more to like bodybuilding, physique competition, maybe athletes, but it's still a reality too. So I think it's important to understand a six-pack doesn't necessarily mean you're healthy. You can actually be underweight and too lean to the point where your body actually can't maintain a certain amount of muscle function, tissue, and even just normal operating systems because you're not consuming enough calories and your body doesn't have enough fat to just perform. But I don't think that's a high percentage. I would say like less than 10%, really less than 5% of people out there are falling in that category. That's just something I wanted to mention. We even talk about in the PDF. What's more important is staying in this healthy range, usually going to be between 10 and 20% body fat for men. For women, it's usually going to be about 12 to like 24, 25% body fat. And again, we have this in the PDF below, as well as like more calories breakdown and all the funds I'm kind of talking about here. And even now the question probably comes up like, all right, cool. If I'm not going to count calories, how do I know what to do and how much to eat? How do I figure out portions? And this is even something I've referenced in the past. All clients out there, you guys have probably heard this or seen this, or if you're a new client, we're going to talk about this. And this is a great resource to kind of dig into, probably why maybe I sent it to you if I did, is using our hands as a reference point for portions. So for example, and this goes really deep in other PDFs we had in the past from our kitchen rescue pack, and even the one we have below, figuring out exactly what that looks like using your palm, using a cupped hand, using your thumb, and what those servings can look like for men versus women, and even your body type and what your body composition goals are. So with that being said, I do think there is a time and a place even for counting calories. And the idea to me behind that, and this is how I look at it, and a lot of clients that we work with, I use this as a leveraging point of two things. One, when I first work with a client, I always ask everyone if they're comfortable with it, send us pictures of your food. Don't even worry about counting calories. Just take pictures of it, send it to us so we can visually see, because guess what also happens? You may think you're, eating a cup of something and then log that it's 200 calories or whatever the number is, but you're probably having more than that. Most of the time, people are underestimating the portions and serving sizes. So unless you're actually weighing it, which I've done in the past, and actually kind of can create unhealthy habits as well. And I do actually think there's a benefit. It can be a tool to understand what an actual tablespoon of peanut butter looks like, what an actual cup of oatmeal looks like. I'm just going to use these as examples because they're pretty common food choices as we start to make changes, what that can actually look like. I think that's very important in healthy behavior to start to understand. But if we start to overdo that, you become stressed about those choices. Now it's actually negatively impacting and hindering future choices and even how our body's responding when it comes to even like the hormonal response, the hormetic response. When we're talking about stress, quality of life, quality of sleep, there's all these components that get impacted if we're too stressed and focused on the number versus, again, quality of life and the quality of our choices and the food that we're picking. So that's just to recap here a little bit. Counting calories has a place, but you don't need it to be successful. It's more about understanding the portions of your food and what your body responds best to. Because again, I can even use the textbook answers of, let's say I'll eat 2,000 calories to lose weight. but my body actually might be a little bit more efficient at just performing its daily functions and not burn as many calories, or it might burn more calories. Or maybe you have a thyroid kind of condition that's a benefit burning more calories, or it can be putting you at a disadvantage where you're burning less calories, hyper or hypothyroidism. And there's a lot of other impacts there. But again, everybody's different here. So being able to understand that just because the textbook says that, or our coaching team says it, or anyone says it, doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. It takes time to dial that in. That's why I even tell all our clients, and all of our coaches tell our clients, be patient with this process. We're going to go in with a plan, but we're going to also check body composition, like Chuck and I have talked about in the past, whether it's weekly or bi-weekly, checking our body percentage, body fat percentages, water levels, lean muscle tissue, skeletal tissue. And again, even if that's not 100% accurate, having a reference point is where the data comes into play. So knowing, all right, I got to increase or decrease calories. I have to shift my proteins, my fats, and my carbs. So that's the other piece of the equation, is understanding what works for you. And sometimes calories can be a tool for that. But I think more importantly, especially from a sustainability standpoint, figuring out what portions and food choices your body responds best to is what's really empowering. And what makes this sustainable, and not turning into, all right, I'm going on a diet for, 2 months. I'm going to cut my calories. And then when I go back to normal life, I drastically increase my calories. That's where most of us are going to probably fail and see challenges, myself included, in the past, before I've kind of shifted my focus. Also, when I was fighting, you can kind of see in this picture here, I had a leaner body composition because I had to make weight either at 155 pounds, believe it or not, in my 6-foot frame, I was fighting at 155 pounds, or 170 pounds. And the most, it was like 175. And actually 185 in like certain tournaments and whatnot for like grappling, but usually it was 155 to 175. And it was usually day before weigh-ins, where I would have a full 24 hours to refuel and rehydrate. So there's ways to manipulate that. But when we're talking about walking around weight, you want to be able to have that sustainability. And that's where being able to have an understanding of portions, not necessarily obsessing about calories, comes into play. So all of that to say, be mindful of not obsessing over the calories, and be weary of anyone that stresses like you have to be counting calories the rest of your life, because that may not be sustainable. If it is, that's totally cool. I do it. I probably log 5 out of 7 days a week just because I like it. And it's just enjoyable for me because I'm kind of a weirdo like that. But not everyone's going to be like that. So be mindful of that. And that's okay. And that's why I wanted to pose this to everybody, so that you can understand. Use the PDF below and use this idea of mindful eating, intuitive eating. And we'll dive into that in future episodes. If you guys want to see more and you want more support, this is just kind of getting the ball rolling for you guys. Again, look at the description below. We have all of our resources, coaching options, courses, from our 28-day nutrition course to our 8-week to shred program that's coming out. We now have our booty builder and total body workout series. That's both for at home, if you don't have any equipment, as well as how it can go cross over to the gym, or if you do have resistance bands or dumbbells, as well as our actual one-on-one pro coach plan, our fitness nutrition vault, which still has great access to a bunch of resources and custom planning still, and really everything in between. So you guys can check that out. I hope this was helpful and kind of maybe shed some light onto how to shift your mindset around not obsessing about calories, but also being mindful and aware of what you're putting into your body and having a better relationship with food. That's, at the end of the day, what I think is most important. So that is it, y'all. I'm going to go enjoy. Now it's Memorial Day weekend. I'm kind of doing this and recording this for everyone watching it, obviously, in the future. Hope you guys have a safe and happy Memorial Day weekend if you're celebrating it, if you're here in the U.S. And if you're outside of the U.S., just keep enjoying, keep grinding, and I'll check you guys later. Yeah, y'all.